Is it at all possible that God should give life to the vast earth that becomes dead and dry in winter and spring? Should demonstrate His power by deploying more than 300,000 different forms of creation, each of them as remarkable as man? And should further demonstrate in this deployment His all-embracing knowledge by the infinite distinctions and differentiations He makes in the complex intermingling of all of those forms. And then He should not bring about resurrection, should not gather His creatures together, or be unable to do so, should not restore man to life, or be unable to do so, should not be able to inaugurate His supreme court, and should not be able to create heaven and hell? No, never. Now, let us explain the proof. We see that the owner of this realm shows many samples and examples of resurrection after death, every century, every year, and even every day on this narrow and ephemeral earth. For instance, every spring, we see that in the course of 5 or 6 days, more than 300,000 different kinds of small and big animals and plants are resurrected, and the creatures that die in winter are revived. The roots of all the trees and plants, as well as some animals, are revived and restored exactly as they were. The creatures that are created become almost the same as the creatures that died in the previous winter. The seeds which appear, in their outward form, to be so close to each other, nonetheless, become distinct and differentiated from each other. And then, with extreme speed, ease, and facility, they are brought to life in the utmost order and equilibrium in the course of 6 days or 6 weeks. And this revival takes place all over the world at the same time, none of them confused with other beings. No organs of any creatures are forgotten. Is it at all possible that for the one who does all of this, anything should be difficult? That He should be unable to create the heavens and the earth through one command, and that He should be unable to resurrect man with a single blast? No, by no means is it possible. Now let us look at this truth with the binoculars of examples. Let us suppose there were to be some gifted writer who could write out in a single hour the confused and obliterated letters of 300,000 books on a single sheet without any error, omission, or defect, complete and in the best form. If someone were then to say to you that the writer could write out again from memory a book written by him that had fallen into the water and become obliterated, would you then say he cannot do it? I do not believe it. You can never say so. It is very easy for that person who could write out 300,000 books on a single sheet to write your book, which had fallen into the water. Besides, he had written the book that fell into the water, That is, he knows all of the writings in the book by heart. Similarly, the earth is a sheet too. If we regard each species of creatures as a book, 300,000 species of creatures are created in spring, that is. 300,000 books are written on a single sheet. No book is confused with the other books. No errors, mistakes, or confusions are observed. Is it at all possible that a being that can write 300,000 books on the sheet of spring without confusion cannot rewrite the book that fell into water? As a matter of fact, he had written that book for the first time. Could we doubt that our book of life will be written again after we see with our own eyes the 300,000 books written on a single sheet? Or think of some talented king. In order to demonstrate his power, or for the sake of providing a warning example, he removes whole mountains with a single command, turns his realm upside down, and transforms the sea into dry land. Then you see that a great rock rolls down into a valley, so that the path is blocked for guests traveling to attend the king's reception, and they are unable to pass. If someone should say to you, "That exalted one will remove or dissolve the stone, however great it may be, with a single command, he will not leave his guest stranded," would you then say that he will not remove the stone or be unable to do so? Definitely not. The fact that he removes mountains with a single command, turns his realm upside down, and transforms the sea into dry land proves that he can lift a stone. Similarly, the Lord of Majesty invites his guests to the land of the hereafter and to the gardens of paradise. This world is a stone that blocks the way of the guests. To be able to reach the land of the hereafter is only possible if that stone is removed. Can it be said for the being who spins the stars and galaxies like a catapult stone? How will he remove the stone on the way to the hereafter for the guests? Or look at the truth with the binoculars of this example. If you saw someone summon together a great army in one day, and if someone were then to say, "That person is able to call together the troops in his army, who had dispersed to take rest, and assemble them again in battalions," and you were to say, "I do not believe it," you know well how lunatic would be your denial. Similarly, every man is a battalion. Atoms and particles are the soldiers of this battalion. God Almighty, who is the commander of this battalion, created man by bringing the atoms and particles together. Doubtlessly, the being that created this battalion out of nothing will gather the particles, which are the soldiers of this battalion, and which started to rest as a result of death, with the blow of a trumpet, and the battalion of human beings will be formed again. Is it difficult for the being who creates a big, regular army consisting of 300,000 nations in spring, out of nothing, to bring together the particles of the human body? Definitely not. Revival after death is not something that is irrational. Examples of revival and resurrection are seen every century, every year, and even every day. Here are some of them. The creatures that die in winter are created again in spring, either exactly in the same form or in a similar way. The day is killed by the night and is created again the next morning. Human beings are killed by sleep and are created again and dispersed in the morning. The clouds are brought together in the sky, then they are dispersed and then brought together again, showing the samples of the gathering. Hashir. The trees that die in winter are decorated like warres of paradise, and they are given life. If you imagine yourself to be alive 1,000 years ago, and if you compare the past and the future, which are the two wings of the time, you will see samples and examples of the resurrection and the hereafter, as many as the number of centuries and days. Would it not be madness to deny the resurrection of man by regarding it unreasonable, despite observing so many samples and examples? Now, look what the Quran says about the truth that we have mentioned. The glorious and eternal dominicality, the almighty and all-embracing sovereignty of the One who gives life and death to this vast and wondrous earth, as if it were a mere animal, who has made of this earth a pleasing cradle, a fine ship for man and the animals, who has made of the sun a lamp furnishing light and heat to the hostelry of the world, who has made of the planets vehicles for the conveyance of his angels. The dominicality and sovereignty of such a one cannot rest upon and be restricted to the transitory, impermanent, unstable, insignificant, changeable, unlasting, deficient, and imperfect affairs of this world. He must, therefore, have another realm, another kingdom, one worthy of him, permanent, stable, immutable, and glorious. He causes us to work for it, and he summons us there. Now, let us summarize this proof in items. 1. The 300,000 species created in spring, in other words, the 300,000 resurrection and gatherings, introduces us and makes us know the being behind the curtain, who is Al-Muhi, the giver of life. Al-Mujid, the inventor, and Al-Khaliq, the creator. 2. It is not difficult for the being who writes 300,000 books on a single sheet in spring to write our book again. Besides, he had written our book earlier. 3. The person who cannot perceive and realize resurrection and gathering will see that stranger resurrections and gatherings than those of man always take place before the eyes of everybody, if he looks at this realm carefully. We do not want to mention some examples again, since we have already mentioned them. To sum up, the person who denies resurrection should look at the season of spring. If his soul still denies the resurrection of man after seeing so many resurrections and gatherings in spring, he should condemn himself.